Hi guys and welcome. Nembon here with another episode of Fun Farms, the series where I'm taking one mob at a time and showing interesting farms based around some unique game mechanics. Today, I will show how to build a fully functional and efficient passive mob farm, including all the necessary preparations, using very little redstone in a relatively short time. From the redstone resources required, we would need a few dispensers, and it would also work if you only had two, a handful of redstone torches, and some sort of slow redstone clock. Any hopper clock would do. For mine, I will be using 4 hoppers, 2 comparators and 2 pieces of redstone dust. We would also need some obsidian for portals, blocks that emit light, jack-o'-lanterns, glowstone or sea lanterns, a few water sources, either in solid or in liquid form, a few buckets to fill with water, and a crate of eggs. You would also need a few chests of any regular blocks and many double chests of dirt. We will be solving a problem of transportation in my world, especially getting from place to place using the Nether Hub, and we'll be doing it using horses. Minecarts are decent, but horses are the fastest among all conventional methods of travel. Not only they can be almost twice as fast as minecarts, but combined with a speed 2 potion, achieve more than 20 blocks per second, which is twice as fast as the speed of flying in creative, to put it into perspective. There are 2 ways to get fast horses. By breeding them, but it gets progressively harder to get an improvement with the speedier horses you get. For instance, if you have 2 horses at 90% of available speed, to get a horse with 92% of speed, the breeding process needs to draw a horse with 96% speed. So when it gets average with the parents, you will get 92. You would need to breed them around 25 times to get this improvement. On the contrary, if you rely only on horse spawning, a horse at 92% speed should be found among on average 12 wild horses, which for the most part are already grown and ready to be ridden. So due to the way gaming computes spawning of peaceful mobs, we have to get rid of all peaceful mobs in the spawn chunks for the farm to work correctly, and then prevent them from spawning. You would say, that's why you replace all the grass in your area in mycelium. And you would be right, but this is a common misconception that you have to remove grass from your spawn area. What you need to do is just prevent animals from spawning, and you can do it either by removing all the spawnable spaces, or just by filling the mob caps so the spawning won't even start. And it is actually way easier to do it than you might think. That's why I set up this test platform here about a month ago with almost 1000 spawning spaces filled up with grass and lit up very well, in the spawn chunks and in the correct biome. And so far, nothing has spawned on it. The secret is, you need to prevent mobs from spawning in the spawn chunks while the player is in the spawn chunks. If the player is away, spawn chunks are loaded, but nothing is spawning here, since mobs only spawn near the player. So what you need to do is build 4 cages on the outskirts of the spawn chunks in 4 corners, and each filled with at least a mob cap of peaceful mobs. In a single player and on servers with view distance set to 12, this is 10 mobs, so I'm putting here at least some teen chickens in each of the pods to be sure. You can be more creative and put your automatic chicken farms here instead. Spawn chunks is like a region with a render distance of 8 around the world spawn point, and typically player loads much larger area around it anyways, because the view distance is typically larger than 8 chunks. When a player leaves the spawn area, the pods are unloaded, but there is no player at this point to trigger spawning in the first place. Obviously, you need to kill all the existing animals in the spawn area, or if you want to keep some, you need to rename them so that they would not count towards the mob cap. So with the spawn area ready, we can find a suitable location for a mob farm. For that, it is advisable to use programs like Amidst to find an island anywhere in the ocean that is decent size and with no land around it within server view distance. So with view distance of 12, this gives an area of 400 by 400 blocks. This is not the usual 128 blocks for hostile mobs, as peaceful mobs won't despawn once far away from the player, and everything in all loaded chunks counts toward the mob cap. The island should be a decent size to fit the farm and should have plains biomes in it, so horses would be able to spawn. You should be able to find plenty of them in your world. So when we arrive at the destination, we need to prepare the area for the farm. You might be thinking, I just avoided removing grass from my spawn chunks and now you are saying we need to remove it from here? No worries, I'll show you how you can do it relatively quickly using only water. What you need to do is go to each peak in the island and place a water source on a block that is raised at least 1 block above other blocks in the vicinity. Notice how water goes for the most part using the shortest path down to the lowest point. Now you need to grab a bucket of water, just one, and a few blocks, and start updating the stream below the water source by placing and grabbing water with a bucket. This spreads the flow, allowing to cover more area every time you update the stream. Sometimes the water will be stubborn and not flow in the area you want. In this case, just place or remove a few blocks to change this path. That's why we place the water one block above, so we are always able to place blocks on a level one block below the source. Now with all the water flowing, you can now fly on the sides, almost like in creative, to make sure all the grass blocks are either flooded or taken care of. You should also kill all the animals that end up in the ocean. So now we have both the spawn chunks and the farm area ready, and so far we have just used a bunch of water sources and a couple of crates of eggs. And what's more important, we didn't use much time to do it. Now instead of tearing down some of this terrain, we will build the farm above the island to save on extra work. The design of the farm I'm going to build is also very simple. It's just a massive build because we need to build up a large number of spawning spaces, because spawning of peaceful mobs is extremely rare. Quick look into a test world with a reminder about water mechanics. A source spreads up to 7 blocks using Manhattan distance from a source placed on a flat surface. When the platform is only 6 blocks wide, the water spreads further for up to 8 blocks. When we shorten the other platforms by 1 block, we can increase the reach of that single bucket of water to flush down whatever is in here. The last terrace needs to be 8 blocks wide, Manhattan distance wise, to stop water from spreading. What's cool about diamond-shaped paths like these, unlike square platforms, you can place blocks in certain places without obstructing water flow nor creating dead zones. These places can be used to create channels where we can transmit signals between platforms. One of these can be a torch tower, with one torch safely placed in between levels and the other in the middle of the level, preventing them from being washed out. Every second block, we branch out the redstone tower into a block with a dispenser on the side of this block. This happens to be in the exact middle of the pad. So when I press this button, all these paths get washed away, and when I press it again, they return to the original dry state. And that's how we can stack up the paths. Obviously, if you are a fan of square buildings and square farms, you can cut this design in 4 and fold it differently to get a square footprint, but you're gonna cover less area, producing similar lag for the server of water flooding down the paths. As well, it requires more redstone and makes a boring square looking farm. The obvious benefit of using this layout is the fact that all the mobs and drops end up in the center already, but that would not be that important at the end, which I will discuss later on. Let's go back and show on a few examples how this design can be used in practice. This is pretty useless but really cool to build a mushroom farm that produces about 1.5 stacks of mushrooms per harvest. I used one pylon to transmit signal and the second to hide the seed mushroom. The farm can double as a crop farm and currently is being used as a netherwort farm. It has 2,000 places and produces normally about 1.5 stacks of mushrooms in a few hours, but this particular setup allows to harvest 2 double chests of netherwort at once. Another example is this hostile mob farm, not only with diamond-shaped paths but also diagonal water streams, as well as diagonal walls using cacti to eliminate spiders that may fill up the mob camp. Each path is 1 block shorter than usual, with signs to prevent spiders from sticking to the sides. The water on the paths alternates to always provide spawning spaces for mobs. The drop chute is 5 wide with a 3 by 3 opening to make sure spiders won't attach to the walls. And the fall is sufficient to kill witches as well. So that's how diamond-shaped paths can be used in general farming. So let's go to the peaceful mob farm. Next step is to find the diamond-shaped perimeter of the farm that would fit a diamond-shaped spawn pad in it, with all the spaces being in plains biome. I'm not super exact here because otherwise I would sacrifice some of the farm's circumference. However, blocks with beach or ocean biome would not be able to spawn any peaceful mobs. We also need to know where the center of the pad is, and then lay out the shape of the terraces and the dimensions for each step of the flowing water. So we start from the outside. The outmost pad is 8 blocks wide. We jump by 1, and then going by 7 blocks, and 7 more blocks until we reach the center. In general, the size of the spawn area is dictated by the environment, so you can shrink the sizes of the intermediate steps as needed, as long as the outer pad is exactly 8 blocks wide to stop the water, and the pad in the center have enough area to house the dispenser and the torch tower. We need to fill the first pad with dirt. If you think that's a lot of work, just imagine that each block of dirt placed means your farm would have one more spawning space for all the animals. It really doesn't take long to get in the swing of things, because once the shape is determined, you just follow it with dirt. With the first pad constructed, you need to build a collection basin where all the animals will be falling into and then be pushed to the center. The floor of the basin should be a couple blocks below the edge of the spawning pad, allowing animals to freely fall and be pushed into the center. The pads should come out a bit, and water sources should have its place on a ledge one above the floor level, so they don't merge and create an infinite water pools. This will create a flow of water that would push the mobs to the center. At the bottom, we need to mark down the spot for the portals in a 5x5 pattern and adjust how terraces fall down to the center so that all the water finishes naturally where the portals would form. Now the portals. Take coordinates of the portals in the middle of the farm and the portal you will be using for accessing the farm. Then compute their precise nether locations on X and Z coordinates and place them in the nether. You would likely end up with portals very close to each other. What you need to do now is to move both of them in the opposite directions by the same but short distance, and then verify they connect properly. Now the redstone. I put the hopper clock on the top of the portals, 4 hoppers organized in a circle, 2 comparators, blocks and dust, but you can use any clock that you fancy. The torch tower goes 1 block of the center through the pads so that the torches are protected from water. Now you need to get to the top and measure how long it takes for you to be pushed by water from the center pad. In my case it is 50 seconds, so I need to put here 74 items to have a cycle of little less than 60 seconds of water on and off to make sure everything is washed out. Very simple. You might want to check occasionally on the hoppers, because over time they will start building up items by duplication, which lengthens the cycle and thus lowering the efficiency of the farm. Now lighting. Take your light blocks. You need about a stack per floor, depending on the size of your farm. First one goes in the center above the place where the water would be. This is not a spawning space anyways, so we can place it here. Then step down 1 level, place a light source on a 3rd block from the edge on the corner, and place other diagonally on the same distance from the center, spacing them at most 5 diagonal blocks apart, meaning they could be at most 4 diagonal blocks between them. This provides enough light to light up all the spawning spaces with light level of 9 and higher, allowing spawning of peaceful mobs at all times. These lights will also light up the paths below them, eventually preventing grass on that path from turning into dirt when they are flooded by water. Now we just need to seed the dirt path with grass and continue building the other floors. Before we hook up everything to the clock, we need to trigger the dispensers on every second floor to provide nearly constant opportunity for the mobs to spawn, either on the even or odd platforms. Also, with 4 floors ready, we are in a good spot to analyze the efficiency of the farm. The game tries to spawn 10 animals every 20 seconds, so a theoretical maxed out peaceful mob farm would allow all 10 mobs to spawn and then transport them to the nether or kill within next 20 seconds. This would produce whopping 30 animals per minute, or 1 animal in 2 seconds. Such farm would be possible, but it would be extremely large as well as a killer for server performance. In this case, an average animal is being spawned randomly at a dry pad and stays there for half of the clock phase, which is 30 seconds, until it's being flushed. Then it takes on average 1/3 of the time it takes to be flushed from the middle, which is 17 seconds, to fall down the pad, and then another 50 seconds to be transported to the nether. This gives an average lifetime of an animal in this farm of about 100 seconds. With a mob cap of 10 animals, this gives theoretical maximum of 10 animals per 100 seconds, or 360 animals per hour, which is 5 times less than the theoretical maximum for any peaceful mob farm. Is it really a problem? Not really. This 4-pot farm produces by my testing about 110 mobs per hour, which is far less than its theoretical maximum of 360, meaning that spawning algorithm fails mainly due to the small amount of spawning spaces rather than due to the used up mob cap. So despite having 9,000 spawning spaces, this farm is theoretically still not big enough, and the fact that it takes us ages to transport the animals to the nether is not the biggest problem so far. So let's build a few more floors. With 16 floors, I needed to expand the collection basin to accommodate for animals dropping from higher platforms, because they can move in the air and miss the target if it's only a few blocks out. Also, I added cacti fence so no hostiles can spawn on it without the need of lighting it up, as well as it prevents some strange animals from getting lost and taking up the mob cap. And it looks cool as well. On top, I added sporadic lamps to keep up the light level of 2 when the top pad is flooded to prevent grass from turning into dirt on the top level. Apparently, water sources underwater are not capable of keeping the light levels to keep grass from disappearing. Occasionally, an animal or two can decide to try to go back to another pad while dropping from the higher pads, which would inevitably end in its death, so you could occasionally find their remains at the portal on the other side. I also found that horses and other tall animals, like cows, drop in water and take occasional suffocation damage from the floors above them. However, I have never found any leather on the other side, meaning that the overall damage from suffocation is very small. The farm now produces 350 animals per hour, which is at its theoretical limit, meaning that we met the mob cap. And with 37,000 spawning spaces, we maxed out the design. That's pretty much the farm done. A few words of caution at the end. When flushing, the farm produces enough lag for the server, so it may miss a tick or two of the light updates, and despite the light levels, spawn a few hostiles on the platforms when the farm is being loaded. But only when it's being loaded, so be aware when entering the nether that you might need to fight a bit to get your loot. Also, this is not a farm meant for longer AFK sessions, as you would get enough animals to hurt your frame rate and your server in an hour. Obviously, you could add an automatic mob sorter to filter out horses and only send them to the nether and cook the rest, or place the portals closer to the drop to send mobs to the nether quicker, but that's not the point. Here you have, as I would like to think about it, the simplest, overpowered, peaceful mob farm you can build. So, what we were talking about? Horses. Now I can take them, one at a time, to my horse testing facility. On the way, they run across the rough speed evaluation contraption. It's just a pressure plate connected to the chain of redstone lamps 4 blocks apart, triggered every 3 redstone ticks, one after another, so with the light going at 13.3 blocks per second. So if I see that the horse is not capable of keeping up, I can dispose of him immediately. Also, I can lower the floor at the peaceful mob trap collection point, and if the horse is still able to suffocate me in the ceiling, it indicates a very good jumper. I am then taking the best ones to my secret horse testing facility, where they can be evaluated for their jump and speed. Nether Hub has been supplied with a Perpetual Brewing setup designed by El Mango that is capable of producing large quantities of Splash Speed 2 potions, which are dispensed by walking over this pressure plate so the horse can get a boost as well. This allows me to travel to my witch farm, which is more than 3,000 blocks away in the overworld, through the nether in whopping 20 seconds. However, it is not as breathtaking as cruising 20 blocks per second in the overworld. That's all what I have prepared for today. I hope you found this video interesting. If you did, please leave a like and leave me feedback in the comments section to let me know what you liked about it and share with others. If you didn't like something, please leave me a comment as well so I can improve things in the future. And see you in the next one. Bye bye!